Okay, Peter, so just wanted to briefly review Canelo v Plant at the weekend. It was a bit of a coronation. I think we've got to look at this fight, Canelo v Plant, and we know Canelo went in as an overwhelming favourite to finally annex Plant's IBF title and win, therefore, all four super middleweight titles and unify the super middleweight division, the first undisputed champion in the super middleweight division. They needed to inject a bit of spice into this fight, and we had that, I think, with the fisticuffs at the weigh-in and all that sort of thing. And Plant did come in, very confident. As I said last time out, I think Plant was the only person that thought he was going to win that fight, but that did give him a shot. He came in and I thought he was going to freeze a little bit, but he didn't. He seemed to grow in confidence during the fight. But Canelo was Canelo, and it was that, that constant pressure, that body work, forcing Plant back, breaking him down, and eventually he got that 11th round stoppage. Thus annexing the IBF the title and becoming the first undisputed champion at super middle. So, I don't really want to put too much in depth about that, that performance and about what happened there. We kind of all knew what was going to happen, but I wanted to look at where Canelo goes from here. And this is the interesting thing. I mean, we've got to look at what he's done now. He's come from light middleweight. It's hard to believe as well that he's only 31. He seems to have been around forever. But, he obviously started at light middle, unified the light middleweight division, moved up to middleweight, unified the middleweight division. Now he's unified the super middleweight division. And he's also had a dabble in light heavyweight when he went in 2020 and beat Sergey Kovalev at 175 to win the WBO title. So we got to sort of look at him. He's obviously going to look at light heavyweight, I think, there, again. But we'll look at what his options are now. I mean, really, the first option you say, he's unified the super middleweight division. There's no real obvious fights out there for super middle, but we'll go through those. But he's going to defend that title, I presume. Obviously, the difficulty comes in now. Canelo picks who Canelo wants to fight when Canelo wants to fight. He's the Super A side. He's the pound for pound number one. So he's unified the titles. He's going to come up with the problem of defending the titles against the number one challengers in those four respective weight divisions. Whether he wants to do that or will choose to do that, and even though he'll get some leeway with the divisions being who he is, there's a big question mark over. That's going to cause a problem. It's almost easier to unify the title than it is to defend that unified title because of all the mandatory challenges. But if he does choose to stay at 168, and also, by the way, it's worth saying that he's also said about his future plans, he's just going to sit down now, talk to Eddie Renee, talk to various people, have a few months off, and just decide what to do. And his next outing will be in May, so we can pretty much nail that on as the 7th of May 2022. It's going to be the Cinco de Mayo weekend where he always fights. So it's who's going to be in the opposite corner. Well, as I say, the options are to stay at super middle and defend. An obvious fight that we've been talking about for ages is Golovkin 3. Canelo's always been a bit lukewarm on that, but certain people like DAZN are very keen on it. It has great name recognition and value. The thing is, I don't think Canelo's ever going to go to 160 again. He's never going to go down to middleweight. So that means Golovkin would have to move up to super middle. And you've got to question, Golovkin will be 40 on the 7th of May next year, or, he will have just turned 40 in April. So he'll be 40 years old. He lost to Canelo, a few years ago, and he's also moving out of his natural weight division up to Canelo, where Canelo is very comfortable at now. So, again, you've got to say is that going to be a big sell, even though it's got great name recognition? So there's Golovkin. There's also Jamel Charlo, the WBC middleweight champion, 32-0. Now he's talked about moving up to fight Canelo a few times and said he wants to fight the winner of Plant Canelo. An easy fight to make. He boxes for PBC, who Canelo, was out with Canelo Plant, or who was co-promoted with Showtime Canelo Plant. So an easy fight to make. And again, good name recognition. But there's also, going back to Golovkin, he's got a difficult fight in December against Roy Otto Murta, who is, that's a unification fight in Japan. Now, Murta has great name recognition in Japan. If he were to beat Golovkin, then maybe, Canelo might say, and he's also been in talks to fight Canelo before, Canelo may say, I'll fight him. Again, he would have to come up to 168. Wouldn't be a massive fight in America, but would be huge in Japan. And, Canelo's got to look global now. Where's he going to go? What's he going to do? It would be a huge fight for him to go to Japan if the money was right. So, and there's also David Benavidez, established at super middleweight, an undefeated super middleweight who's held super middleweight titles twice. Had a bit of trouble with the scales before, maybe not totally dedicated, but does have a little bit of name recognition, established at super middle. So, would be a good defence. And then you've got real curveballs. You've got people like Zach Parker in the UK. Not a lot of people even in the UK know who Zach Parker is, but he will become, it looks like, the WBO mandatory. So, he would then have a shot at saying to Canelo, you have to fight me because I'm your WBO mandatory. So, again, that's where it, can get a bit messy. There's also believe it or not, David Morrell Jr., who you may have never heard of. He's 5-0, and he's the WBA regular super middleweight titleist. So he is then entitled to a shot at the super middleweight champion, which is Canelo. So a guy going in as his 6th pro fight against Canelo seems ridiculous, but the way the alphabet organisations work, that seems to be, that might be, that's nailed on for the WBA. But then we're getting back into the ridiculous nature of the alphabet soup again. So options at super middleweight, are varied, but nothing really, a direction that says that's the way he's going to go. So then you've got to look at, if he looks at light heavy, if he says, right, I've unified the super middle, I'm now going to go for light heavy. Arthur Beterbiev is really the sort of, the IBF and the WBC light heavyweight champion. You've got to say he'd be the way to go. He'd be the recognised name at light heavy. A really tough fighter, 16-0, come forward pressure fighter. You've got to say that would be a great fight for Canelo. That is bound to be exciting. He is 36 now, though. He does have a history of injury, which again may make the fight more attractive for Canelo. But that would be the way to go initially. Then you've got Dimitri Bivol, 18-0, as the WBA titleist. He is a small light heavy. He has expressed interest in fighting Canelo and even coming down at 168 before. So that's another option. So, to go up and unify the light heavy division, I would say is definitely on the agenda. But whether it will happen immediately, whether it will happen in 2022, I don't know. Again, you've got to remember that, Canelo's only 31. My bet is he's going to hang around at super middle for a little bit, make, a few defenses and then target the light heavies. And then we've got to ask, in a way, where is this going to go? Where is this eventually going to end up? And I think we'll go into a bit of fantasy boxing now and just look at, is there any possibility at all that he could go to heavy? This is the ultimate journey in a way. And he's always going on about boxing history, Canelo. He's a bit of a historian buff. He's very much wants to cement his legacy. He very much wants to make history in boxing. He's obviously obsessed with boxing, as the tattoo on him says, and he's always saying no boxing, no life. Well, if we look at boxing history, there are precedents for this. If we go back to Georges Carpentier in the early part of the 20th century, in 1911 he won the world welterweight title, then he went on and won the world middleweight title, then he won the world light heavyweight title. We had a little break for the war where he became a big French war hero, was a fighter pilot and all that sort of stuff. And in 1921 he went up and he'd won the European heavyweight title, and then he went in 1921 and challenged Jack Dempsey for the world heavyweight title. He lost that fight in 4 rounds, but he did campaign hugely successfully between welterweight and heavyweight. But men were a different size then. When he challenged Dempsey, Dempsey was weighing about 13.5 stone. But if you look at more modern history, obviously you've got Roy Jones, in 1993, winning the world middleweight title. And then going up, through the divisions, winning the world light heavyweight title, and eventually fighting John Ruiz in 2003 to win a version of the world heavyweight title, the WBA version, before dropping back down again. So, that has been done before. But looking at Canelo's size, it just seems unlikely, coupled with the way that heavyweights are going and the size of heavyweights. Now it seems almost impossible. Canelo is 5'9", but then you look at Mike Tyson was 5'10". So that's not a great difference. Roy Jones was 5'11". There are smaller heavyweights out there. Look at what Andy Ruiz did to Joshua. Ruiz is 6'2". Maybe that could be conceivable. Usyk is 6'3". Whereas it seemed like they were all going wild at, Joshua 6'6", Fury 6'9". You could never in a million years see Canelo at 5'9" fighting Fury at 6'9". So the size of the heavyweight seems to outlaw that. But I just thought it was worth having a look at where it's gone before, the relative sizes of these guys, and where exactly is the Canelo story going to end up? We don't know. It's always like that quote about it. I was reminded of that quote that Alexander the Great was supposed to have wept because he had no more worlds to conquer. I don't think Canelo's weeping now, but he's definitely, I think he may cement himself. My bet is he's going to cement himself for a little bit, and the Cinco de Mayo fight on the 7th of May 2022 will be against another super middle or against a middle that's come up to challenge him at super middle. And then I think 2023 he's going to look at unifying the light heavy division. I don't think personally with his stature he can go any further than that, but who knows? If the right fight came along, because like I say, if he was to fight a short heavyweight, it could happen, and that's what Jones obviously did in 2003. He went up to heavyweight because Andy Ruiz had just beaten Evander Holyfield for the WBA heavyweight title, and Ruiz was a 6'2" heavyweight. Jones was 5'11", and he did the job and won that title. So, the way things work out, you could never say. If you get a short heavyweight up there that Canelo can make a quick jump up, it may happen. But we'll see, Peter. But the Canelo story rumbles on with its seeming inevitability behind it. And we wait for the next challenger and we wait for the next timeout. And let's not forget as well, a great thing in boxing, he's had, in 11 months, he's had 4 fights. So he dabbled in the super middleweight division, 4 fighting Rocky Fielding in 2019. But when he turned his attention fully in 2020 to the super middleweight division, he's had 4 fights in 11 months and unified the division. And it's great when fighters fight like once a year now, twice a year, to see that level of activity from the leading sort of light in the sport. So, here we go with the Canelo story. Let's see what's next. Thanks, Peter.